Have you ever dealt with a truly difficult person? Maybe they are stubborn, maybe they are angry, maybe they are rude, and you are just having the toughest time getting through to them. It's almost like no matter what you say, they're resisting everything you're saying, they're being combative, they're being argumentative, and you're just like ready to throw your hands up in the air and give up because you don't know what to do. If this has ever happened to you, sit down and stay tuned, because in this video I'm going to share with you 7 techniques to deal with difficult people. Number 1 is to stay calm and focus on building rapport. So what I mean by that is not to start kissing up to the person or trying to befriend them or instantly trying to build a connection with them while they are in the middle of an argument or being combative. What I mean is, first, stay calm. Meaning you have to stop and say, okay, I'm going to take the initiative here to be the bigger person and to be the better communicator. Remember, in one of my videos, I shared the 20 laws of persuasion. And one of those laws is that the meaning of all communication is the response that it elicits. So if you're somebody that's truly serious about leveling up your communication skills, you have to take ownership and take the role of being the influential, the persuasive communicator in this situation by taking ownership of the outcome. And so by doing that, what you say to yourself is, regardless of what my intentions may be, the meaning of this communication that I'm having with this person is going to be dictated by the response that it elicits from them. And so I am going to consciously do whatever I can to make sure that the best response gets elicited. And step number 1 in doing that is remaining calm. If you're not calm, you're going to wind up becoming reactive. We've all been in a situation where we're dealing with a difficult person. We become reactive because we get triggered by something that they said. That causes us to have to say something to them. And then later on, we look back and we regret what we said. We're like, man, I really got fired up, and in the heat of the moment I said this, and I probably shouldn't have said that. The key in that moment, right then and there, is to stay calm and keep your tone and even your body language relaxed. This is going to do 2 things. Number 1, it's going to signify to them that you're calm, but number 2, the body language in and of itself is going to relax you. I've said this before. We can influence the way we feel through our body language. If we start exhibiting defensive, restless body language, we are going to become even more defensive and resistant and restless. Hey guys, if you enjoy this type of content, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that bell notification so you get updated when I release more videos like this. It really does help the algorithm. And make sure you click the first link in the description so you can get access to a free resource I've set up just for you. And so the key is to stay calm and focus on keeping whatever connection you might have with that person where it's at. So at this point, we're not trying to build more of a connection. We're just trying to keep whatever connection we might have, however small it may be. We're trying to keep it where it is and prevent it from breaking down even further. Number 2 is to listen actively and validate their perspective. Look, I've said this before in lots of videos. All of us have a deep human desire to be validated, to feel understood, and to feel valued. And in more cases than not, one of the reasons why the person is being difficult is because they just feel like you don't understand them. They just feel like you're not getting their message, you're not getting their point, and they don't feel validated. And so oftentimes, they could just be being resistant and being difficult because they feel like you just don't understand them. And so one of the easiest ways to reduce that resistance is to rephrase their concerns and show them that you understand their point of view. You can use phrases like, I see why that might be frustrating, or I completely understand where you're coming from, or I never thought about it that way. This is going to instantly reduce that level of resistance that we are experiencing from that person and why they are becoming difficult. Look, you got to remember, sometimes people's reasons for being argumentative or difficult are legitimate, and sometimes they're not. It doesn't matter. Our role is to reduce that resistance and that difficultness in that person by any means necessary. And sometimes that means we have to understand that, okay, they really don't have a justifiable, true reason for being this way, but I think it's the fact that they don't feel understood. So let me just let them understand that I understand them, and maybe that will reduce their resistance. And I got news for you. Oftentimes, that's enough. Much of the time, that's enough. Not every time, but in a lot of cases, just making the person feel validated and understood solves the problem. Number 3 is to use pattern interrupts. So you want to break negative cycles by responding in unexpected ways. You can do this through humor if it's appropriate, or by asking an unrelated question. The point is that you don't want to keep a cycle of negativity continuing through the conversation. What I mean by that is you hear the person out, you listen to what they're saying, you actively listen, you validate their perspective. But if they keep harping on about something negative over and over again, regardless of how many times you've let them know that you understand their perspective, you got to start shifting them. You got to start breaking that negative cycle. And what you need to do is shift their focus and open the door to a more constructive conversation. And you do that using pattern interrupts. Again, you could change the subject. You can observe something in the environment that's true. You could ask a thought-provoking question, but ultimately, you need to start breaking that cycle. Number 4 is to reframe the situation, which ties into the pattern interrupt. Oftentimes, you could use the pattern interrupt to then reframe the situation. So what is reframing the situation? Reframing the situation is shifting their perspective by presenting the issue as a solvable problem. So instead of arguing, you can say something like, listen, let's focus on how we can resolve this together. And oftentimes, what this requires you to do is to circle back to the earlier steps. So number 1, you have to take a deep breath, take a step back, stay calm, focus on not breaking whatever rapport you have. You don't want to break that rapport. You want to listen actively to validate their perspective. Then you want to subtly use the pattern interrupt to break the cycle. And then you reframe the situation by making a statement like, listen, I hear where you're coming from. I get it. Look, at the end of the day, I just want to work something out where both of us feel good about this. I certainly want you to feel good about it. It's important to me that you feel good about it. It's important to me that you feel understood. And I really just want to create a win-win situation. So all I'm asking you to do is let's just try to figure out the best way to solve this problem. How does that sound? And like any reasonable person is going to respond with, okay, let's try. If they don't, you need to keep circling back to breaking that negative cycle, or you may need to you might ultimately come to the decision that this person is not persuadable or they're not worth persuading. Again, that's another rule that I cover in a previous video about the laws of persuasion. Some people are not worth persuading and some people cannot be persuaded. But assuming that neither of those are true, that they can be and that they are worth persuading, you make this statement to them, and in most cases, if they are a reasonable person, they're going to agree with you. Number 5 is to offer choices, not ultimatums. Look, going back to what I said earlier about people having a deep desire to feel validated, to feel heard, to feel understood, there's also a deep desire that ties into all of those things, which is desire to feel like they are in control. When you give somebody an ultimatum, you're ultimately taking that control away from them, or at least you are creating the perception that you are taking the control away from them. And that is going to make them become resistant and even more combative. So oftentimes, a person might just say no or refuse to comply with you because they feel like you are forcing them or trying to take control over the situation. And so they're just going to be stubborn and not want to comply with you. That's why you don't want to give people ultimatums in certain contexts. There are certain contexts where ultimatums can be appropriate. We can get into those in a different video. But in many cases, they are not, and instead offering a choice is going to work better. An example of this would be like, hey, listen, the way I see it, based on what you've told me, I think there are two ways we could solve this problem. There's this way and there's that way. Which of these two ways do you think makes more sense? You see, what I'm doing is I'm identifying what I see as the solutions, but instead of saying, look, there's two ways we could solve this problem. You either got to do this or this. Instead of forcing them to do it, I'm asking them which of those two ways do they think is the best way, or even possibly I could ask them, is there a third way that maybe I haven't thought of? Again, what I'm doing is I'm letting them know I am in no way interested in trying to remove your control from the situation. Next is to utilize reciprocity. So again, circling back to the great book by Dr. Robert Cialdini, written over 40 years ago, Influence, the Science of Persuasion. One of the weapons of persuasion, a very powerful one at that he identified, is reciprocity. What this basically tells us is that when we give something to someone else, they naturally feel compelled to return the favor. And so, in the context of dealing with a difficult person, this doesn't mean that in the middle of the interaction you pull out a diamond ring or a cup of coffee and say, here you go. This should calm you down a little bit, although maybe in certain contexts that would work and that's okay. But I'm trying to think practically here and realistically. Instead, what you could give them is an acknowledgement. So giving them an acknowledgement or recognizing a thought or a solution that they presented is a way of creating reciprocity. It doesn't have to be something physical that you give that person. It could just be something that's untangible but still very valuable to them, which is acknowledgement and validation about a point that they made. Or it could be a compliment about something that they did or a decision that they made about something. So in other words, like you could be in an entanglement with somebody that's going south, and what you could say is, listen, I might not agree with the way that you did this, this, and this, but I got to tell you, the way you did this was super admirable. It showed true leadership skills. You absolutely made the right decision when you did this. I can completely understand why you did it. I was super impressed by the fact that you did X, Y, and Z. So again, you're leveraging something that they did. You're giving them a compliment. You're giving them acknowledgement. You're giving them something to help reduce that resistance and make them open to what you're saying. And then number 7 is to stay solution oriented. Look, we tend to attract what we focus on most of the time. And if in an interaction with a difficult person, you are focusing on being right, you are going to create a situation, or you're focusing on being argumentative because you want to be right, you're going to get that. You're going to create that feeling of this is a battle, I want to be right. If I'm right, that means you're wrong, and that just creates a bad situation. If instead you stay focused on a win-win outcome, a solution that benefits everyone, well, then the entire context of the communication changes. Your body language naturally follows after that. Your tonality changes. Your verbiage changes. The words you use change. The phrases you use change. All because you shifted your focus. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up. It really helps the algorithm. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this video. And if you enjoy this type of content overall, subscribe to the channel and hit that bell notification so you get updated when I release more videos like this.